So tonight's panel will be looking at women's football in Victoria, more specifically looking at the current setup, the pathways and opportunities available, as well as lastly, we'll be looking at what does a post-COVID-19 look like for the women's game. So without further ado, let's head over and join them. 2, 1, and we're now live. Yeah, you can go from now.
I'm Bianca Chelano. I'm the current TD of Geelong Galaxy.
Okay, my name's Aish Good. I am current president at South Yarra Soccer Club. Been involved in football for a really long time, and it's awesome to see so many women involved.
Hi, Kat here, currently head coach at Alamein and still continuing some work with the Junior Matildas when we get back into camp with our new cohort for the under-17s.
I'm Samantha Stolbaum, but everyone calls me Sam. I am the reserves coach at South Yarra for the Victorian Premier League women's team. Aish is my boss. I am also involved with Soccer Mums. I work for Melbourne City FC as one of the coordinators, and I'm also a current Soccer Mums deliverer for FE.
Cool. And Margot?
Hi everyone, this is Margot Robin. I'm a current player and technical director of Bayside United.
Cool. And Aish?
Hi everyone, my name's Aish and I'm currently coaching the senior women girls team at Bentleigh United Cobras, formerly known as Caulfield United.
Perfect.
Okay. I think as it currently stands, there is a lot more opportunity than when there was back when I was a young female footballer who played with boys up until I was 18. So there's definitely progression over the last 20, 25 years. However, obviously there's loads of improvement and loads of things that need to be done going forward to make it better and I think it starts, for me, it's crucial that the junior development of the girls programs have to really grow and become a lot stronger in order to then feed players into state league women's, community-based women's, VPL, NPL, W League, Matildas. Because if we haven't got the growth mindset of really focusing on the youth of the girls that we've got at the moment, they just drop off and tend to drop off at that 14, 16 age group, and most of the time they don't come back.
It's funny mentioning that, Bianca. I just was on a webinar earlier. It was the main focus around retention. The biggest takeaway I got from that is, I guess, differentiating between growth in the game and retention of players are two different things. I think we're a little bit naive to think that growth is enough. And what I mean by growth is that from a population base, we've got more 14-year-olds coming through.
Yep.
Think about, I guess, your baby boomers and the generations that come through. Mm-hmm. There's a growth of, I guess, adolescents or juniors or whatever you want to call them coming through playing sport in general. Yep. I think what the game really lacks is, I guess, honing in on what retention actually is, not just the fact there's more people playing the game, but obviously looking at retention, the means and the ways that we actually, I guess, provide our customers, our players, our families, or everyone involved in the sport, their positive and unique experience that keeps them in the game, and we retain that number going forward.
I absolutely loved what Kat and Bianca had to contribute, but what about nurturing? We also have to find that we need to nurture the players. I mean, coming from a mom's point of view, I'm a mother of 3, and I started coaching my 3 children because they didn't have that courage to play. They were always sitting on the bench, and I had enough of that sort of stuff, So I'm thinking, with our girls going from junior and transitioning to senior, eventually going to a higher playing level of NPL, maybe even W League or Matildas, we need to nurture them. Yeah. We need to find that support for them. We need to find out what we can do to help them grow, what their needs are, and just whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. Mm-hmm. We need to find out a bit more about them itself.
Yeah, well, I guess for me it's hard to speak about the Australian landscape because I've been in Australia for 2-3 years, but if I can compare to what I had from home, the evolution is quite similar anyway.
Yeah.
Women's soccer needs some support. When I say that, I speak about the venues. A lot of clubs try to develop themselves, but they don't have the right venues to do it. Same with the coaches, or like it's same money-wise. It's hard for the club to find a budget because women's soccer doesn't create interest as much as men's soccer. That's a fact. Even if I don't like this idea, that's a fact. And we have to deal with that and to create like the conditions for the girls to stay, to be happy, to learn, to improve, and well, that's something quite hard to do, I guess. But I can see already, even if I've been here for not that long, I can see some evolution.
Yep. For me, it would be accessibility. Growing up, I played, my brother played, and although we played the same sport, it was completely different in terms of opportunity, accessibility at club level. And then I guess now it's, it starts at the grassroots. We have to make it more accessible. We have to change the vocab. So, it's not just girls are playing, it's everyone's playing. And I guess that's what we've tried to do at Yarra. It's changing the vocab, and making sure that everyone feels a part of it. And then retaining the players. You got to make sure they have a good experience, because there's no point trying to get them for a year and then they go. It's making sure every year we add a team or whatever it is, but making sure that they know it's open to everyone.
So I think just touching off what a lot of you have mentioned, but Ashley was just talking about vocab. So expanding on that, I think the discourses around football, the message we choose to send to like people from grassroots, the players from grassroots all the way up, especially in regards to the women and girls game, is really important. So it all starts really, I think, like, you can't be who you can't see. And one of the massive problems we have is a lot of these girls that are coming into the sport, I think our participation rate, it is growing, but it's significantly lower than what the men's game is growing at. So we need to get more women and girls involved in playing our game. And in order to do that, we have to make our game quite attractive. So the role models that we have currently in our sport need to be more visible and need to be paid, I think, a little bit more respect in order for a lot of these girls to aspire to want to, one, come into the game, but also to stay in the game and play the game. So I think that's really important, that we change these discourses in sport to make the game more inclusive for women and girls. And so then, like, the power structures potentially will change. So it's not just a male-dominated space. It's going to be a space that's, inclusive of everyone.
Yeah, just a couple of great points coming through on the chat thread as well. And Bianca, I really like your point about NPL. I was going to actually bring that up. The, I guess, structures we're competing against in our own game is that, as we know, the NPL, you have to have right down to under 12s. I guess a holistic approach, you're trying to put a whole, I guess, gamut of age groups, needs, wants, demands, cultures under of top NPLW senior ranks to then try and, I guess, streamline that and build a culture and that back down to under 12s. Now, under 12s don't need that, or do they? That there's such a, I guess, emphasis on winning and competition and things like that. So by design, I guess, we're making it quite difficult to be able to, I guess, select coaches that fit the mould, that provide that environment for under 12, under 12. Then looking at, well, that club also needs to have a coach that creates this environment for the senior girls or the high performance team or the results driven. So I think, given that, some clubs need to identify what or who they are, who they're trying to serve and where they are within the football landscape. I think where clubs are, and I guess more broadly, the NPLW is such in its infancy that all you've done is transition community-minded clubs and ask them to be in this performance phase or within this pathway without giving them the skills or the language or the ability to develop environments that suit the actual age group. The coaches are suiting the actual needs of their athletes. And we're trying to do that under one club umbrella, under an NPL structure, and having this criteria to say that you have to have all these age groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're, I guess, guilty of is just having a one-size-fits-all model at a club, thinking that's the way we have to coach our 12s, 14s, 16s, 19s, and thinking it's going to get the best outcomes.
Yeah. So, yeah, Kat, some great points there. And, you know, I think, obviously, as Kat said, the NPL, especially the WNPL, is in such an early stage of being in Australia or in Victoria that it's not quite developed, and it's consistently every year developing more and more. And as you know, it is quite expensive to play, and you know, you've got cost of facilities, a much longer season. It's not 18 rounds, it's 27 rounds for the juniors. It's just a completely different environment. You're trying to provide environments with much better experienced and qualified coaches, because I think that you need experience and qualifications. It kind of goes hand in hand, because I know that I wouldn't be the coach that I am today without that 10 years worth of coaching experience, and also slowly doing some certifications and certificates and things like that. But the coaching hours, like I was clocking thousands and thousands of hours within a 12-month period, and that was coaching at 2 different clubs. I was a full-time football director. So I think that the clubs going forward, we need to be able to adjust, and that junior level, okay, there can be a WNPL for junior. However, we've taken away that mindset of developing players, because you have to fight for, you've got to fight to maintain and keep your NPL license, or you're going to lose your license if you don't perform when you get relegated. So I think that that's a big issue that's going to come forward in the next 12 months. We've already seen, or Galaxy's already seen the ramifications of that with our senior team being relegated. So I think that not just for Galaxy, but for football, especially here in Victoria and in Australia, that if we are going to have an NPL for juniors, and it is to develop a pathway, then we need to, you know, reiterate that they are developing players rather than we're just after the win. You know, we all want to win. That's the base, you know, that's the base of the game. We all love to win, and I love to win. Even my 3-year-old daughter loves winning. But I think that it's really important, and the core is developing players, not only as players, but as people. We need to develop these girls and these players as individuals, because some of the skills that they learn back at your clubs and playing football and team, you know, communication and team skills, respect, all these skills they take away with them, and they become life skills. And I think that that's really, really important for us going forward in football, that we address and make these, you know, key priorities in football as well.
I'm just going to jump in there, and whether this is controversial.
Go for it.
I'm very anti, you know, this is the way we should coach girls and this is the way we should coach boys. At the end of the day, we're trying to develop a person, and we're within that, we're trying to develop a player, a person, an athlete. So although our approach has changed based on, I guess, the environment or the culture that we're coaching in, and that's, your culture is made up by the people within that environment. So if that tends to be boys, then you will adapt your coaching style, your language, your culture, the way you nurture that particular person based on that environment and that culture, rather than gender-based. And that's, you know, from the needs of that particular player in that time. That's what we are, or that's what we do as coaches, is we try and, I guess, satisfy those needs and give them, I guess, the tools and the development or the empowerment to be better as people or be better as players or athletes. So for me, I'm really into, this is how we should talk to girls, or this is how I coach boys. And Aish, you're right, it's not copy and paste. I know that I can speak to this player in this way and get, I guess, a reaction or a change in behaviour that I need based on the culture, the environment, the relationship, the rapport that I've built with that player, regardless of gender.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, there might be certain things that might tailor your initial approaches, but I think that's always going to come down to the relationship that you've built with that player to be able to work with their needs and to be able to develop them in a positive environment.
I think it's really like fair what you say, Kat. I think it's really important as football, as a goal and as a sport, we have to move away from this whole gender, like, you know, boys and girls, men and women. The ideal world would be that we're all just footballers and, you know, we are treated equally. So I think that's definitely like somewhere that we want to get to, because the reality is just not there at the moment. But I think it's definitely a goal that we all need to work towards.
Yeah, and I think, look, and the reason is that we do keep having those conversations about women and football. How different can I guess, we change mindsets about the way we use our own language. We're differentiating, I guess, gender, sport. Yes, they're very unique, and there does need to be silo approaches in terms of competitions and, I guess, regulate whatever it is in terms of the sport. But I guess holistically in the space of how we work with players is based on, I guess, you know, so much of needs and nurturing and getting the best out of a person rather than, you know, this is a textbook on how to coach boys. You know, where's the book to, you know, coaching, you know, it doesn't say how to develop male CEOs. You go through, you know, this is how you work through business and, you know, leadership and things like that. There's never any, this is how to become a male leader or a female leader. It's the same in coaching. We're leading people. So there's always this reference back to the person, like, you know, the panel's already mentioned how important it is to look at the person first. And then obviously develop them as an athlete and a player. And at no point have I said male or female, person, athlete, player.
Yeah, I think Margot had a comment that she wanted to make.
Yeah, I guess it's right. I agree with that. When I was saying what I've said before, I think that girls in a way need a safer environment than boys to be who they really are, who they want to be, and improve even more. And I'm not saying that because girls are softer or whatever reason. It's psychologically, that's a bit how they are. But if I want to give an example, I just read this article on, sorry for the topic, but I find it's important, on period, and how coaches, and so it was from the World Cup in 2019, the fitness coach from the American national team planned their fitness training around their period, girls' period, and Chelsea is now doing that. How many clubs in the world are doing that? Not that many. I've never had any doctors following me in these kind of things. And I know that can be an issue. What I'm saying is that when you have, most of my life I had men coaches, it's hard to go to a man and speak about that. Speak about it to your coach, and you have to, and coaches have to understand how to deal with that and how to speak with their players. And when I say you need to adapt your communication, it's more in this way, in the way that you want the girls to feel comfortable with everything. And unfortunately, well, I don't know the courses in Australia, the coaching, the football courses, but I don't think that they're speaking about that.
Yeah.
And so it's more about an understanding of the needs of the girls, and that was an example, but you have different other examples, and just adapt your communication and the way you're doing things.
Okay.
Can I weigh in on this one, please?
Bianca was up next, and then Sam.
Yeah. So I'm kind of a little bit in the middle of what Kat's saying and what Margot's saying. I think they've both got valid points. I think we do need to treat all players as athletes, whether they're male or female. You know, I've worked with all abilities. I've worked with the deaf football, quite heavily involved with deaf football back in the day, and also male and females. I've coached both. They've both got its pros and cons. But I think that, you know, when you're developing relationships with your players and as a leader to your players, it's important to be able to motivate them or find what makes them tick or what makes them work. Some players do like that one-on-one. Some players like to be addressed in a group setting and not be pulled aside one-on-ones. So, and I think that that's adaptable to all footballers or all athletes. You've got to know as a coach or as a TD or as a club, you need to be able to know that even though it's a team sport, you still need to know how to understand and adapt to the players as individuals. And I think that that's crucial. But also going into what Margot said, obviously Galaxy's doing a bit of research. I've been doing quite a bit of research into some publicity and some information that's come across scientifically with being injury prone or more prone to getting injuries during a menstrual cycle. So this is something that I'm looking at, you know, when we tend to go back to football this year, is something that I am looking at probably developing and bringing in. And I think that, you know, it's important because I do see this from a sports science background. I do see that it could be a possible reason for, you know, some injuries happening or being more injury prone during that time. So it's maybe something that we need to monitor. But if you've got all male coaches coaching females, it's probably not something that they're going to want to do. So this is where maybe welfare officers and things like that.
Oh, just happened.
I don't know. I don't know where the future of that's going to go, but it's definitely something that needs to be explored and tested in the waters here, definitely.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree and love what Margot said, because I actually did learn a bit about that. My mentor, he actually taught me, and he taught me about periodization and fitness, and how to work around a female cycle. Because I, you know, coming into coaching just under 6 years and stepping into seniors, and I've never dealt with female players because I've always been coaching boys. And this is the past two years I'm coaching senior women's, and I had to learn about this sort of stuff. And Margot, I absolutely commend you for what you just said. I absolutely loved it, and that's how I've been training my girls as well, and working around that cycle as well.
Yeah, I just, again, it was Jill Scott and Dawn from the US national, Dawn Scott and Jill Ellis from the US national team that implemented, I guess, periodization around the menstrual cycle. And what I'll just say, I guess it comes down to a training methodology, and it does come down to periodization and what are the factors that you are or you do need to consider for your athlete. Now, if you have female athletes of an age that have their menstrual cycle, then obviously that's a factor you need to consider. Now, whether or not a male or female coach has the ability to recognise that as being a factor that they need to consider, that's going to come down to experience. Maybe in some cases it might be a willingness of coaches to deal with maybe one of those sort of forbidden topics in sport, but nonetheless it's a consideration that needs to be taken when periodization or you're looking at, you know, structuring, whether it's your annual sort of conditioning model or your training cycles. But the same thing occurs to your 35-year-old experienced player versus your under 17 player that's coming into a senior environment, and you know you have to adapt and modify their training for the needs of that particular player, which are completely different from an up and coming player to an experienced athlete. You know, as coaches, and fortunate those that have the sports science backgrounds would know that they need to look at, I guess, the needs of the individual in terms of what kind of physical capacity or outputs you're wanting from that athlete, whether it's male or female. You go from, I guess, training 4 to 5 times a week in a semi to pro environment. That's one condition and factor you need to consider, to, you know, coaching senior men where half of your squad are brickies, and you know they're on the tools all day anyway. So how do you adapt a training cycle for them to get the best out of them as athletes? Versus, again, the other example of pro players on their menstrual cycle? How do you then adapt and take in consideration those factors to get the best out of the athlete, the body, physically the body, and building the capacities of that particular athlete? No, I probably want to jump back to Bianca, and given that you're starting to perhaps be a little bit of a trailblazer here in Victoria about doing that research around menstrual cycles and how we actually implement that at a level that we don't have exercise scientists, we don't have strength, well, some do, but, you know, we have the support of physios and strength and conditioning coaches or, you know, sports scientists to back up some of this, I guess, research, or at least make sure that it's well known and we're providing clubs with that knowledge. And I think that's probably the first part. We can have all this knowledge, but, you know, where are the, I guess, true and tried measures where you're actually applying this at an NPLW level? You know, what's it going to take where we can actually, whether it's within policy or it's something that we want to actually invest in, is to protect our developing players, because I've done it, my ACL 3 times, whether or not I knew where I was on my cycle. But, you know, what can we do to avoid some of our up and coming stars from being out of the game for, you know, more than 12 months? So is it something that, you know, we as a cohort of coaches and working the female game, how do we, I guess, drive this to a level where we do have some application around, you know, putting this in place that we can actually track and monitor, you know, the female menstrual cycle and the effects it does have on increasing the risks of injury?
I think, just in response, Kat, I think this is probably, as I said, it's going to be kind of tried and tested, or, you know, it's going to be trial and error a little bit, but it's definitely something that I'm passionate and do want to work towards. But obviously one person's not going to change the world, and one person's not going to be able to make it all happen. But obviously, if I can try and get some wheels in motion, and, you know, with women and coaches like you ladies that are here, if, you know, that's something that we could put our heads together and experiment and kind of come back and, you know, get some results and report back. And that's how we're going to build, just like the Women's Football Network started 3-4 years ago. You know, it starts small, and, you know, we're going to have to do our own research. We haven't got the research or the tools and means, like you said, available here to us. So we've got to start that. And, you know, and I'm sure that there's plenty of people to come on board. You know, I've done a lot of work and still work with a lot of sports scientists and things like that as well. So, you know, I'm sure that a lot of them would jump on board to help out the cause anyway.
I just want to say, like, I think it's really important what we're all saying, that one of the main issues in football is that there is an issue with the masculinity and femininity side. And with this whole menstrual cycle conversation, I think it's really important that we communicate to the girls appropriately and make sure that they don't feel inferior or weak as a result of, you know, their natural, you know, body cycle. And how that's communicated to the players, especially from, you know, a male coming to talk to a female about that. I think definitely more education and training needs to be done in that area, because one of our major issues is that our participation. So women and girls are not wanting to participate in, like, they are. Yes, our participation numbers are growing, but, you know, the reality is they're significantly lower than the men. So how can we actually bridge that gap to make football a more, like, welcoming and inclusive environment for women and girls, and those conversations around, you know, menstrual cycles and whatnot? Because the reality is we just need to make it, I think a few of you have touched on this, like, more fun, inclusive, welcoming for them, so then they, one, come to the game, but then stay in the game. Because one of our huge issues is just that lack, well, one, not wanting to participate, and then two, when they do participate, they don't stay in our game.
Yeah, I mean, this discussion could seriously go on all night, and I think we're all so passionate, which is amazing. But just what Bianca said, you know, club welfare. I know since employing a club welfare officer at our club, the retention of girls, but not just girls, but players in general, has been so much better. I think it's supported players, coaches, parents feel more comfortable. And I think, we really need to look at, yes, we want to identify all these things in supporting players, but as clubs, how do we put structures in place to support everything else? Club welfare and player welfare, and everyone's welfare is definitely got to be top of the list somewhere.
Definitely.
Yeah, great point, Ash. And unless you just said that tonight, I wouldn't have a clue that a welfare officer at your club has increased your ability or your percentage of retention of your players. So if that's something that's working for you, can we share that model? Is it more imperative, rather than having a technical director looking after 12 to 16-year-olds in terms of football development, should clubs at NPL level now be mandated to have a welfare officer with some kind of minimal sort of qualification that's addressing not only the development? I mean, develop the kids all you want. You can develop them right up to the age of 16. Great job, technical director, but if we don't have the welfare officer there to keep them in the game from 17 and beyond, what's the point of developing them as footballers if they're going to leave the game? I get obviously the benefits of football being school for life, but in terms of keeping players in the game and good players moving on to become W League players and representing their country, then that might be something that we need to push. Given our experience within women's football, is it imperative that, given our low retention rates, great that our participation is growing, but like I said earlier, it's that retention rate that I think that's critical. It should be that we're mandated to have some kind of welfare officer within clubs to support male coaches in having some of these difficult conversations. Is it educating male coaches or any coach, female, male, to have these difficult conversations? It's something that we've worked through at a pro level, is that it's critical to be able to manage some of these difficult conversations to make sure you're addressing the needs of your athletes or your players as well.
And we didn't have a rule book on how this club welfare officer role was going to be done. It was literally something that when the committee got together, it was something that we saw a gap in, and it very much was week by week, what does this person become involved in? And naturally over time, it's probably become one of the most important roles at the club. And we've worked out, how it supports coaches, how it supports players, and it's probably something that should have been implemented years ago, but the priority has always been players on the park.
Yep.
And not this welfare aspect. And as I said, there's no rule book, there's no wrong way of doing it. It's just working out what this person represents and how they can support everyone.
In our coaching courses and our coaching content around such a huge emphasis on the X's and O's, the technical tactical aspect of the game. But as we've already sort of mentioned tonight, there's so much more to the physical and I guess the psychological part of the game where we're going to get players, whether it's retention, performance, or just enjoyment. I guess we need to look at all quadrants of what makes up a person.
Definitely agree. Last point, does anyone want to add something? Anyone would like to add something? No? Good.
Just quickly on that topic, I think we're all in agreement about welfare being something, and some of us have seen results from having welfare officers, but for me, having someone to aid and assist with welfares in a club environment, I think it should be mandated, and that's something that we should start advocating to the FFA and FFE about, is definitely that welfare officers, especially in an NPL environment where you're dealing with a lot more pressures, and the kids feel a lot more pressures as well as the players. So, that's definitely something that should be advocated, and something that I will bring up at the next Women's in Football Network whenever that ends up happening, the next event. But it's definitely something that needs to get raised. And, unless people like us start raising the question and putting it to them, nothing's ever going to change, or it won't be implemented, because no one's actually given them that feedback.
No.
Yeah, just on that point, Bianca, you're spot on. But, I'll just go back to Aish, is that, it might take clubs, like from a ground up initiative, that clubs take on this I guess, role of implementing the things that they feel that they need in their environments. And then obviously the more people know about it and the knowledge, the education is spread about, I guess, a blueprint of implementation and obviously what can and can't happen, and here's maybe some barriers and challenges. I think, we're certainly, in the environments that I've worked in, we're so guilty of just having a reliance on Football Victoria or Football Federation Australia to mandate an action or a policy or put something in place, when I guess the people at the coalface like ourselves really see what the need is. And I think we should be proactive in putting things in place to, I guess, fix what we can within our own environments and control the controllables. And I guess we're naive in thinking that there's going to be this magic sort of potion from above that's going to trickle down over the game and fix every problem. I think, as much as we can, we need to work within our environments to provide the best experience for our players.
No, I'm just in agreement with everyone. I think it's really important that, we look after the welfare of all our players. It may have to even be from like a volunteer capacity, I think, as we know our budgets are quite sparse at football clubs. That might just involve like creating that culture where, someone who is quite, capable and confident and wanting to commit to that sort of role puts their hand up and initiates that. So, I think it's definitely something that would make our game a lot better.
Yep. All right, so we're back with our final topic of the night, and we're going to be looking at what does a post COVID-19 look like for the women's game, and what do we need to start doing, or what do clubs start doing? Kat?
Oh, okay, I'll start.
Sorry.
If I could pass this message on to our current coaches in the panel, and then try and, I guess, drop a pedal in the pond, and hopefully this ripple sort of gets out to the wider football community. I think it's just so important that there's a measured approach to how we return to playing. So return to play, and it'll be no different to, I guess, maybe some of the policies and the procedures you have in returning an athlete after injury, is that we've had such a massive decrease or even a complete stop of high explosive movements of our athletes, that if we're expecting them to come back in at a level they left us, or to be coming in somewhere ready to play football, we're kidding ourselves, and it'll just be an injustice if we try and expect our players to do certain things with this, I guess, mindset of we need to try and catch up the time we've missed. I think it's imperative that the federation put, I guess, something within the structures or its return to play or the season formats to take this into consideration about how we return to football safely.
Yeah. Bianca?
Yeah, so I tend to agree with Kath. I think that it's important, that we have the right measures to come back and do light training, pre-season training before we get back into starting games, because otherwise we're going to end up with a lot of injuries across the board from youth right through to seniors, and it'll just cause all sorts of problems. I think it is important, though, that we do have a 2020 season, albeit I don't know what that would look like, whether it's a delayed season or a modified season, a shorter season, but I think it's important for the girls and even for us as coaches. I'm sure we're all missing football and being a part of football and all of that kind of stuff.
I think we have some challenges when we do enter, like when we start playing football, and one of them is going to be the cost. Just knowing from my, currently I know a lot of senior women that have lost their jobs. Don't have money, so the cost of football to participate is definitely going to contribute. I also think the role of like a welfare officer, or just I guess looking after the welfare of all players in the club is going to be really important, as the longer this COVID prolongs, it just means less contact. That can increase anxiety of a lot of players coming into a team environment, a social environment. So anything a club can do to address that, I think will definitely ease in that transition in getting all the players back and resuming competition.
Yeah, I completely agree with Bianca. There has to be some sort of season.
Yeah.
Every single person would have gone through this COVID experience differently, whether they've been isolated on their own, whether they've been with family and friends, whether they've had access to do any sport and fitness, how they've managed, whether they have their job. So from a club point of view, we just have to make sure we are doing everything we can to support these people, because the mental health of everyone is key, and it will flow on to next season and the season after. And we don't want COVID to ruin our sport. We want to bounce back, but we want to bounce back the right way. And I think that's why it's important we talk to council and we get their support. The federation needs to do as much as they can to support clubs, whether that be help us making it more cost effective. Because I certainly don't want to turn around to a family and say you can't play because they can't afford their fees, because they've lost both their jobs. But we also know it costs to play football. So from a club perspective, it's just making sure we understand how everyone's kind of survived this, how it's impacted them as a person, and how our sport can support them, and I guess bounce back from this.
Definitely. And Sam?
There's so many factors to think about, and everybody's covered everything. If I can reiterate, they've got there's cost, there's mental health, there's that 1.5 meter social distancing thing that people are going to keep in the back of their mind. There's a season, there's injuries, there's we didn't finish pre-season, so what do we call it? 1.2 pre-season? Do we have 4 weeks extra to train and then go into it because there's injuries? We can't just go in from where we stopped and go straight into the season. We can't just do that. We have to look after all our players, juniors, seniors, male, female, the masters, even soccer moms. They just can't jump in and start playing, because those women, they're hardcore footballers as soccer moms. I should know because I coach them. They're full on, and they even take on their children. Come on. So you've got to understand that. I love your comment, Aish. I love your comment, Bianca, and Ash and Kat. Absolutely spot on. What do we do? How do we tackle this? And I think with us intelligent ladies and Rohit, I reckon we can come up with some sort of program that I'm pretty sure we can filter out to the clubs and say, look, we should do this. And we should understand that it's just not, we can't just pick up. Hey, we stopped and we're coming back in again. Let's go play. We can't do that. No, it's just we've got to look after our players.
It wasn't just football that stopped. The whole world pretty much
stopped. The whole world,
stopped.
Exactly, yeah.
So how do we, in some sense, get our community back? How do we get that communication back? Yes, we don't want anyone getting injured, but we also know how important it is to come back. So whether, it's mandated as across all clubs that this is how we do it, or it's down to each club knowing their members and going, this is what's going to work. In whatever capacity it is, we have to come back.
Just heading over to Margot.
Yeah, well, I won't be able to say anything more than what you said, guys. I think that was almost everything. From a technical perspective, I would say that we still don't know how it's going to be in a health perspective. I wanted to say, how are we going to be able to play? I guess in Australia, the situation is not that bad. I'm always following European news, and it's a bit more complicated over there. But even here, like how football is going to be, even if we play this season, how it's going to be, how we not going to be able to defend. Well, I'm going to be quite happy if I don't have to. But what I mean is we don't know what it's going to look like. And it's hard to plan things from a technical perspective.
No, it definitely is. Let's go around. So just looking at it as terms of long-term and short-term. So what about long-term? What are your thoughts over there? Do you think things will just return back to the way it was in 12 months' time? Or?
I think that it has the potential to, but I also think we have to be really smart about if this ever happened again, how does it affect us less? Yes, Mike? So Yes, you can have it. Off you go. So how do we as clubs, how do we exist if this ever happens again? How do we, operate offline? How do we still keep our, interactive with our members? How do we still run sessions online? I think we all got caught out by this.
Oh, yes.
I think none of us thought our clubs would ever be shut down for any reason. And long term, how do we better ourselves? So yes, short term, we want everyone back, but long term, how do we become better clubs?
Yeah, definitely. Kat?
Yeah, I guess a lot of the talk at the moment is an opportunity to really reset football. I think we are very good at, I guess, conforming back to what is normal. So I guess my apprehension, or even call it a fear, is that we will just return back to what we did, because that's our default. We do things because that's how it was always done. So that's why I'm very pro towards this reset of football, and welcome the news that they've now got a starting 11, they're calling it, a panel in which involves former coaches and national representatives across the Socceroos and Matildas, devising a panel which will be a voice, I guess, in their collective experience, maybe pointing the game in the right direction. Because although I think COVID-19 is really, I guess, putting a magnifying glass on some of the issues that were already existing within our game, like the cost to families and players, the environments in which, whether they are inclusive enough for females to have a positive experience and stay in the game, these all existed before a virus. So now it's just an opportunity to really reset, I guess, and have a look at what our North Star really is, and tackle, I guess, putting football first. I think it's a call from CEO James Johnson in regards to what some of our priorities are for the good of the game, rather than, I guess, the aspect of commercialisation and those in it for, I guess, different reasons other than the game itself.